Alright, guys, today we are going to be reacting to Andrew School's Two Women on why men find high body count disgusting. Champagne.
Too many bodies for a female to have?
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Oh,
hear your
to have,
perspective.
yeah.
I want to hear yours.
Well, I mean, it's not a deal breaker immediately, but I think once you get above 10, then it's an eyebrow raise.
What if you have 10 in the time span of you having, from the age that you did have, let me just make up a number, 19 till, let's say, like I'm 26, 10, right? But let's say I'm 33-year-old virgin, and then I end up discovering sex, and I have 10 or 12 just because I finally let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But it also comes with accountability, like Andrew was saying.
Yeah.
So is it that really such a deal breaker part, or is that too much just because of the time span of it, or is it just because of the experience of you being with 10 men?
So you say the question is essentially a woman who's had sex with one guy a year for X amount of years versus a woman who's had sex with 10 partners in the span of 1 year.
Is it the
Is that-
time span, or is it
The
the
number.
people, or is it the number?
Both.
I think we look at it. I think most men would look at it the same way. Though I think it would throw a greater red flag if they did it kind of like back to back to back.
Yeah.
That would show even less kind of restraint. But I think that they would look at the overall count. So the way I look at it is this. This is an arbitrary metric. I'm not going to deny that it's an arbitrary metric. It's based on preference, right? There's nothing that I can point to where I can say, this is the dyed-in-the-wool metric which every man follows or should follow. But I can say this as a almost definite across the board. The less, the better. And since it is always the case that it
Audio.
is the less, the better, at least in almost all men that I have talked to, then every single time that you have sex with a new man, this is going to lower your value in the eyes of
100%.
most men. So that's how I would frame it. I couldn't give you an exact number, but I don't think I need to if you know that every single one above one makes you worth less, at least in the eyes of men, than if you had zero.
Good
Does
point.
that make sense?
Good point.
Yeah, it makes sense. But would you also agree that there are other things that you could bring to the table that could raise your value? So it's kind of like this chart graph of different things that come together to make a whole.
No.
So that one's a
here's
big
the thing.
deal breaker for
I would say on the issuance of body count loyalty is what that's pointing to. So let me explain this the best way that I can. Paternity testing is a modern invention. It is something which is very recent. Before the idea of paternity testing came around, how would a man be able to judge if his offspring was his or if he had been cuckolded and his wife had slept with somebody else, had their offspring, and now this man is raising offspring unwittingly, which is not his own? The only way to really determine that metric would be to have a woman who was a virgin, and the reason that you would want that is because then you know that this woman is devoted only to you. Whereas if she'd had multiple sexual partners before that, it's much more difficult to make the determination she would be with you. And now with paternity testing, we know how many women lie about paternity. It's actually a great many more than we ever thought. So I think that this is something which is hardwired into men for a good reason.
Yeah, but just also because
There you go.
one's a virgin in a relationship doesn't
There you go. No, none of that went through her head. None of it. None of it. She was ready to just throw that butt.
she's not going to cheat on you and go run around and
I think that
Do
the
all that
likelihood
stuff.
I think that the likelihood, though, that a woman who is a virgin in a relationship with you does run around is going to be far less than the likelihood of a woman who is promiscuous doing
Yeah,
so. Wouldn't you agree?
100%.
well, what if you've just awakened this what if Lauren here is some hidden freak and she gets awakened and now she's
Wait,
just
hold
running
on.
around
What?
town?
Wait, hold on. So really quick. So really quick on the whole cheating thing. Really quick on the whole cheating thing. Me personally, while it can be an indicator for potential infidelity, at least for me, that's not really the primary reason. Frankly, I just think it's gross.
Yeah.
Damn.
I can't even articulate precisely why. I couldn't even why I actually
Brian's keeping it real. Because it is gross. Because we don't have prostitutes in the pedestals, right? There's a reason why.
could.
But that's why you think it's gross.
It's just disgusting.
I can
That's why you think
respect
it's
that a little bit
disgusting.
more. I agree with that opinion more because that like I can understand that
Yeah,
one more because
but
I
that's
think
why
it's
it's disgusting. Don't you understand? Like, the reason that men find it disgusting is because of that hardwired, innate understanding of if you're sleeping with multiple men, I cannot determine offspring. That's why it's disgusting to men. That's why they find it gross. It's like, it's not enough to just say it's gross, right? The justification for it is very simple. And so when we dive into this, like, I'd like to engage directly with your argument.
And also
right?
notice how here, orange lady, big orange lady, right? You notice how she had to really expose a lot? You know why she had to expose a lot? Because she knows she's in competition. She needs some of that attention, so she had to expose more just to get or be in a competitive space. It looks disgusting, to be honest. Completely disgusting.
And your argument is, what if you awaken the beast? Now you've slept with this virgin woman, and what if you be, if you awaken that beast, and she, well, I suppose it's possible.
yeah,
but
the milkman's coming by. And
but here's what the data shows us. Here's what we know from the data. Because women who marry as virgins have only the sample size of their husband, right? That's the sample that they have. They think that's the best in the world. What the fuck would they have to compare it to?
yeah, I actually have friends that multiple
Nothing. They have
friends
nothing to
that
compare it to. So
been
That's a
that's
good
why
point.
the longevity
That's a good
and the
point.
faithfulness in those relationships tends to be much higher than it is in the general public.
yeah,
The likelihood of
I
it
have
happening.
some
I
very
see what you
happily
mean.
married couple friends that have been together since high school that have never been with anybody else. So I totally see that. I've also seen on the other side of the spectrum, really unhappy like people that wanted to like resented that they wish they had more experience. And I've also
Yeah,
seen
sure,
people
sure.
with a lot of
Listen,
experience.
I
who
can't
have-
argue with your anecdotes.
Yeah.
I can't argue with anecdotal experience, so I'm going to defer to what we see
Right.
from polls and data from people who are studied who enter into virgin relationships, their divorce rate, their marriage rate, their happiness rates, and their infidelity rates. I'll defer to when we have a much larger sample size than what I personally have seen, but rather them being followed so that we understand what the outcomes of those types of relationships are. And here's what we see, just so yet you know. What we see specifically is that men and women who get married as virgins, their relationships last far longer, their divorce rates are far less, far, far, far less. And if a man marries a virgin who's not a virgin, same thing, almost the same identical outcome.
So basically, it's more of the woman promiscuity, because even if a guy, even though there's a chance that he has problem with pair bonding, but not as bad as female, and he marry a virgin, there's a high likely of him staying in the marriage. However, if that same scenario is flipped, the females have a very hard time to pair bond. And that's what we see here. That's why a lot of these divorces are going crazy.
However, if the woman is promiscuous and the man is promiscuous, the outcome's usually bad when it comes to divorce. Same thing if only one partner is promiscuous. So what we can ascertain from this is that if you're both virgins and you get married, it's no guarantee that you won't awaken the beast in the woman. But it's a great mitigating factor, isn't it? It's a great way to mitigate it.
Yeah, and also though, somebody with a lot of experience could just as easily like know what they want now and know what they don't want, and sometimes I also want to bring up sometimes, women have been in unfortunate situations and circumstances as a young child, and there's
That's
trauma,
excuses
and
now.
sometimes you find yourself.
Here we go with
in-
excuses. Here we go with excuses. Yeah, it's a lack of accountability, man. Like, you have to go to these extremes just to justify these kind of bad behaviors.
unfortunate situations where you can change. You can totally change.
Greatest
and
copes
stuff
ever
like
by
that.
women. This is one of the greatest copes that I've
Yeah, there you go.
hear
That's
from
what I said.
women Is the idea that I had childhood trauma.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I'm just going to be blunt.
Kevin
with you.
Sammy used to say
Everybody's
this a
fucking
lot.
Childhood trauma. Everybody.
Yeah.
Every human being on earth has childhood trauma, men or women. It's just that when men complain about it, nobody gives a shit. And when women complain about it, there's a woman there to go, "Oh, sweetie. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry that happened. Oh, it's so terrible that happened. That the man was mean to you when you were, oh, sweet, is there anything, can I give you my other shoulder to cry on too?" When it comes to men, we just don't give a shit. We're like, well, suck it up, buttercup, get your ass back to work because we got to get this project done by 5.
Well, I do disagree that everybody has had.
There you go. She need to be raised very strong in a lot of these females. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one.